Abused girl knocked on our door late at night. I still think about this encounter as an adult. When I was about 10, I'm 25 now, I was downstairs watching TV late at night with my mom and sisters. Everyone decided to head off to bed, and I was left alone downstairs. I started drifting off, and all of a sudden, someone started banging on our door. Hard! I'm talking let me the fuck in hard. I was so scared I just sat there frozen staring at the door like my life depended on it. My dog was laying right next to me and also just stared. He never barked or moved an inch, which was odd because he always barked at the door. The banging never stopped for what seemed like a solid 5 minutes, but in reality was probably only a minute. I looked at my dog, and I think because I finally moved, my dog snapped out of his trance, looked at me for a split second, and jumped up and ran towards the door. He still didn't bark, but instead started turning his head like he was confused. I finally got the courage to get up and open the blinds to see what was going on, and this young woman, maybe around 20 to 25, was standing there holding her left breast in her hand. It was still attached to her, but she had pretty large breast and she was holding it, trying to keep them up from sagging, I'm guessing. She had blonde hair, white skin, and was covered in blood. Her shirt was ripped and her hair was a mess. I remember thinking she may have gotten beat up or was in a car crash. Either way, I immediately went to go open the door. As soon as I went to unlock it, my mom out of nowhere slammed her hand on the door and relocked it. I had no idea she had even come down the stairs, let alone walked up behind me. I was so focused on the door and on this woman that when she slammed her hand, it was almost if it knocked me back into reality. Reality of not opening the door for strangers in the middle of the night. I looked up at her and I could feel my eyes were wide, and I think I even started crying. She put her hand on my shoulder and moved me away from the door. She yelled, "Who is it?" through the door, and the girl yelled back that her boyfriend had beat her up and they lived in the apartments across the street from us. Mind you, we lived in townhouses in a cul-de-sac. Our unit was all the way in the back where you would start the turn. We were the first unit in the row, but where she pointed out her and her BF's place was quite a ways away from us. You'll see how I know that in a minute. My mom asked her name and she said something that sounded like something Annie, maybe Bethany or Stephanie or something like that. I saw my mom hesitate to open the door, but after she yelled, "Please help me," my mom opened the door, stepped out and pulled it close to shut but not completely shut. I cracked the door behind her to make sure she was okay and also see what was going on. The women we'll call Bethany kept thanking my mom and asking to come in because she was scared her boyfriend was going to come after her. My mom refused and explained that she couldn't let her in because of the safety of her 4 kids, but said she would sit out there with her. My mom yelled at me to grab the phone and call the police, so I did. My mom started asking her what happened and what specific unit she lived in. She pointed towards her specific one and told my mom the building number and her unit B. This silver SUV pulled up a little later and she ran towards it yelling, "That's my sister," and then just jumped in. The car sped off without another word from her or a single word from the sister. My mom looked back at me confused and came back inside and shut and locked the door. We just stood there and looked at each other. I asked my mom what about the police, and she said she would wait for them downstairs if I wanted to go to bed. I was too scared to leave her, so I waited with her. Once they arrived, my mom explained what happened, and the officer said she did the right thing not letting her inside. Weird thing is, my dog never barked once until the cops knocked on the door. They also explained that they've been receiving similar calls like that in the area recently. Even worse, the next morning we all packed up to go to the grocery store, and as we passed that building, you could tell the apartment was empty. Like no one had been living in it. Maybe they just didn't have any furniture or anything, but it was still weird. He never came after her that night, and we never saw her or the SUV again. Bethany, Stephanie. I hope you're okay if this was real, but also if it's not, don't ever knock on my door again. Story 2. When a gut feeling saves you from the man waiting for you in a doorway. So this is a story from around 10 years ago. I was 16 or 17 at the time, but I recently discovered this sub and it instantly brought these memories flooding back to me. At the time, I kind of just brushed it off because nothing bad ended up happening to me and put it down to, I guess shit just happens to you when you are a woman walking alone at night. But looking back now, I realize how creepy it really was. I was coming home on my own on a Thursday night after being out at a pub with some friends. We had been out a little more centrally in the city, so I had to take a bus on my own to get home to my residential neighborhood. I had done this route hundreds of times, so I didn't see it as being particularly dangerous, especially as I live in a fairly nice neighborhood. It was only about 11 p.m., but because I lived in a residential area, and it was the middle of the working week, when I got off the bus at my stop it was absolutely dead, and there was no one around. Again, this didn't spook me, particularly as it is only about a 5 out of 10 minute walk from the bus stop to my house. As I turned down a long residential street that leads towards my house, I noticed a guy walking further down the street. This put me a little on edge, but I was reassured by the fact that he had his back to me and was walking away from me down the street. As I kept walking down the street, I noticed the guy turn around and clock me. That's fine, I thought. I always turn around when I hear someone walking behind me at night, so nothing weird about that. But I noticed as we got further and further down the street, he kept doing it. Kept checking I was still walking in the same direction as him. At this point, I'm starting to get pretty freaked out, particularly as I am painfully aware that we are the only two people around. Just as I was weighing up what I should do, he turned down the path of one of the houses to our right, and I breathed a sigh of relief. He is going into his house. I was just being paranoid the whole time. The houses in my area are terraced, with the front doors being kind of embedded into an enclave at the front of the house. What this means is that from where I was standing, about 50 feet away, I couldn't actually see the front door of the house, as it was obscured by the wall. However, I saw him walk down the path and disappear into the front door enclave, so my logical conclusion was that he was letting himself into his house. I can't describe exactly what made me feel like this, but after that initial feeling of relief wore off, I suddenly got this really bad feeling, so I stopped walking and just stood there. There was this tiny voice in my head that said, "What if he is just faking you out?" The feeling became so strong that I stepped off the pavement and ducked down behind a parked car and just waited. After a couple of minutes of crouching behind the car staring at the house, I saw movement and my heart stopped. The man came back down the path, out into the street, and was looking around, looking for me. He must have been waiting for me in the doorway, knowing that if I kept walking, I wouldn't see him until it was too late. Unfortunately for him, his hiding place also meant that he couldn't see me. So when I didn't walk past as he anticipated, he had to come back out into the street to try and work out where I was. Looking back now, I probably should have called the police at this point, but as a scared teenager, my fight-or-flight brain took over, and I sprinted down one of the roads running perpendicular to the street that we were on, as I knew I could use it to take a slightly longer route home. I didn't stop running until I got home, where I quickly double-locked the door behind me. Amazingly, I didn't even think to wake anyone in my family up. I literally just went to bed and then woke up the next morning and went to school. I dread to think what would have happened if I hadn't just suddenly got a bad feeling and stopped walking. Part of me thinks that on some subconscious level, my brain must have registered not hearing the front door shut after the man had approached it, and therefore triggered an alarm in my head. But I had no perception of this at the time. Lesson learned: trust your gut. Story 3. Acting naive might have saved my life. A little backstory leading up to this meeting: I grew up in a shady area and would rarely leave home after 7 to 8 p.m. as it was considered dangerous. Going into high school, I got a pit bull. He was a gentle giant who loved everyone and everything. He had some protection work training before he joined our family, but as he was getting older, he retired and I took him home with me. So, back to the story. I was, at this time, 17F, short, blonde, but very aware of my size. But having a big, scary dog, I finally felt safe walking alone. And on that very night, I had set out to take a longer walk as my dog, let's call him Meatball, really needed to run off some energy. I took him to the woods near my home, and we walked along a gravel path that was partly lit. It was around 11 p.m. and quite dark outside. As we walked, I became aware of the fact that there really wasn't anyone else around. We walked for about 10 to 15 minutes before a man turned up behind us. We continue to walk, and I notice he is taking the same turns as me and Meatball. I sped up, feeling my heart beating in my chest. Meatball, who normally spent his time sniffing at the end of the leash, was now also very aware of the situation. He had slowed down and gotten so close to my leg with full focus on this man. I started turning at every turn I could, and the man followed, even though we were now walking in circles. He started getting closer and closer to us, as I am now sure he is following us. I remember something my father once told us. Never let someone follow you, as you're most vulnerable from behind. If you get in a situation where you can force your stalker to pass you, do. I stopped, grabbed onto Meatball's leash. I leaned back in the leash, acting as I have to put my entire body weight in holding him back. Now I am aware that I, at this point in my life, looked small and weak. But as my father is an old veteran, I could fight before I could walk. And even holding Meatball back was not a task, as I was a lot stronger than I looked. Well, I called out, trying to sound as naive as I could, hoping that if I did have to fight, I would surprise him with my strength. Excuse me, my dog really does not like people, and I can't really hold him back when he lunges. If I step to the side, could you pass us so I have a chance at holding him back? As I say this, Meatball starts barking, growling, and snapping towards the man, who has now stopped. He looks me up and down, stares at Meatball, and turns around, not saying a word. He left quickly, and I called my parents and asked them to meet me, as I now realized he could easily hide anywhere on our walk back. My dad showed up only a few minutes later, baseball bat in hand. Nothing really happened, but after being followed by this man at every turn I took for at least 35 minutes, I know this could have ended really badly if I had not had Meatball or my dad close by. Bonus story. I am certain they were planning on kidnapping her, but after I intervened, they turned their attention onto me. This happened about 8 years ago in my local supermarket. I, 36 at the time, am in the queue to pay. It is a Saturday morning, super busy, and I am second in line. In front of me, at the till, is a family of 3, mom, dad, and daughter. Mom and dad are unpacking the trolley, and daughter is sitting in the trolley seat facing me. Behind me are 2 men, and they are making me super uncomfortable, standing way too close to me. You know when you feel someone before you see them, it was like that. I was facing the daughter, and she looked super uncomfortable, making herself smaller and kept looking over her shoulder to dad. I turn around, and these men are waving and smiling, trying to get her attention. Then the one guy reaches around me and touches her foot. He did it in such a familiar way that I thought he must know the family. She flinched away. He does it again. She quietly says, "Daddy." Dad swings around and says in a booming voice something along the lines of, "What the hell, dude? Don't touch my daughter." This weirdo is like, "But we want to be friends." Dad is like, "I don't know you. Back off." I realize they don't all know each other and instantly go into mommy mode. Dad goes back to unpacking the trolley, and I position myself between the 2 guys and daughter, completely blocking access. Believe it or not, he tries to get her attention again, so I say, really loudly, "You are so lucky that you have such a brave and strong daddy. Look how he is protecting you from these bad men." The dad looks at me, and we have a silent conversation with our eyes. They pack up and leave quickly. I thought it was over. The girl is safe. As I am unpacking my trolley, I suddenly notice that one of the men has moved around and is standing at the end of the till, where you pack your groceries into bags, staring at me with pure malice. The other guy was still standing behind me in the queue, my trolley between us. I won't lie, in the moment, I felt intimidated, terrified. I am not a small woman. I am tallish with very broad shoulders and quite strong. Side note, someone told me the other day that I am definitely not fart dust, translated from Afrikaans but super funny, i.e., I am not small. Anyway, in my trolley is 15 kilograms of dog food. My adrenaline is pumping. I need to show this guys that I am not an easy target. I make eye contact with the aggressor at the end of the till, and I lift this bag of dog food up like it is a roll of toilet paper. My facial expression doesn't change. No strain, no tension, just deep and dark. He keeps eye contact with me. Now I am angry. The fear has gone. I pay and he blocks my exit from the till. I bump him light with my trolley. He laughs menacingly and moves out the way. I decide not to go straight to my car. I walk around the mall a bit, and every time I turn around, they are there, now with a 3rd guy. They are not even hiding the fact that they are following me. The one guy makes a motion of cutting my neck. Fuck this. I start making my way to the security desk. When I get there and turn around, they are gone. I tell security everything. They recommend I let the supermarket know as well. Give them my till number so they can review the security tape above the till. A guard escorted me to my car. I drove home the long way, checking my rearview mirror constantly. I never saw them again, but to be honest, I stopped going to that supermarket. Partly because of that, but mainly their prices are not competitive and my dogs become fussy eaters.